Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another RENNSPORT community event. Tonight, we take to the Temple of Speed, and we take, of course, to Monza. As you can see, we're here in some beautiful front-wheel drive cars, of course, the touring car racing that we see in RENNSPORT. We've got the Hyundai Elantra versus the Audi RS3 out on circuit today. 3 15-minute races in store this evening, of course, preceded by a 10-minute qualifying. Currently, they are just in their quick practice session. My name is Zach Sweeney. I'm in the commentary booth. Got Lino behind the scenes, pushing the buttons, making the broadcast look lovely and pretty. You're watching, of course, on the RENNSPORT Twitch. Make sure you're following along and keeping up to date with everything that comes your way when it comes to community events, servers, releases, everything. All going to be posted on the socials. And for those on Lino's Twitch channel as well, hello, welcome to you lot. Make sure you drop him a follow. He's absolutely amazing as well. So currently into the practice session, just everyone getting themselves acclimatized to the circuit. Well, I mean, not that you really need much acclimatization. You surely have done at least a couple of laps around Monza in your sim racing career. It's not exactly the most technical circuit, but it does provide some fantastic racing. Of course, I believe this is where Marcel Chinchik was crowned the ESL R1 champion, the maiden champion, of course, of the series, back when, of course, it was all kicking off, and won himself, of course, the big old trophy, the interview, and all the prize money that came with it. It's a historic circuit, of course, for RENNSPORT history, back for the ESL R1 majors. Tonight, though, they tackle them in some front-wheel drive machineries. I do love touring car racing, it must be said. It's, yeah, I mean, not my cup of tea to drive, per se, but definitely when it comes to the raceability, when it comes to commentating them, when it comes to watching them, I absolutely love the touring car racing, because it's so... There's a lot of margins, right? In saying front-wheel drive cars or whatever, or no, sorry, open-wheel cars, I should say. There's a little bit of caution taken by the drivers. There's a lot of, do I go for it? Can I go for it? Because a slight bit of contact is going to see a lot of damage to my race or the race of the driver I'm trying to overtake. When it comes to touring cars, not necessarily saying that there should be contact that's expected, but you're not going to be, you know, completely thrown out of the race for having a little bit of contact. There's a little bit of wiggle room to be had. There's tolerance in these touring cars, which means drivers are a little bit more enticed to actually go and send those moves and have a little bit of fun with it as well. So we'll keep in good stead with these guys out on track. Of course, just some of the drivers in the community, some of the RENNSPORT team as well out there on circuit. Already spoken to a couple of them and already given them the great Zach Sweeney guide to Racing 101, which was don't crash, which sometimes can be easier said than done here at Monza. Mark, on your marquee, out there at the moment in the Audi RS3, there is Joachim Thunder as well, making his way into pit lane. I believe we are drawing ourselves towards the end of this practice session. There is only 5 minutes, so not a lot of time, not a lot of experience that you can gain from being in this practice session, but what it does allow you to do is, say you've done some practice or whatever beforehand, or you know, anything like that, and you've had a bit of a break, it just allows you to sort of dust off the cobwebs as such, get yourself fresh, get yourself pumped up, get the adrenaline running, ready for that qualifying session in just a few minutes time, which we are about to process ourselves over into. 10 minutes onto the clock, and then we'll decide the grid for what is going to be a fantastic race in a few moments time.
Indeed. I will also say hello for now. Yeah, as Zach already mentioned, we are driving new cars in some way. The TCRs obviously already have proven themselves countless times in this game, and very much looking forward to this. We've also got a few news coming up at the end of the stream, so stay tuned for that. Kind of a few things to announce, which will also be very interesting for some of you out there. But I think that will be important for later on. I think we should go back to watching our favorite cars go round in circles, because qualifying has just begun.
Very funnily shaped circles, it must be said. But yeah, into qualifying. I have to say, as far as circles go, I don't quite think that makes the cut. But hey, it's Monza. You can't knock it at all. It's a brilliant circuit in of itself. Only sort of 10 corners or so. Depends really what you count as a corner as such. But yeah, a lot of speed here at Monza and a lot of time spent flat out. But that also means plenty of heavy braking zones. And in fairness, when it comes to front-wheel drive cars as well, a lot of times where those front drivers are really under a lot of load. Of course, the big issue with front-wheel drive cars, albeit slightly cheaper to manufacture and things like that, which is great for the masses, for the general population of road users. When it comes to racing them, it puts a lot of stress right at the front, as Mark on your mark, he makes a little bit of a mess of the first Lesmo. But yeah, they're cheap to manufacture and everything, but when it comes to grip, not the best, because obviously the front tyres are doing the turning and obviously the rotating, which, yeah, can obviously result in a lot of understeer, doesn't quite allow for peak performance, but that doesn't mean that front-wheel drive race cars don't make great race cars as well. So we'll see, obviously, as the qualification runs its way through the session. We've got 10 minutes on the clock, which doesn't leave a lot of time, Lino, for these drivers to put their lap time in. They've got to be, nice and sharp, nice and direct, and make sure they get a good lap time in quite quickly.
Indeed, 10 minutes are quite a lot of time in this game. Also, we have as well the resetting tire temperatures, because as some of you have driven in this game might know, tire temperatures can be a bit tricky to get used to and keep them in check, which the drivers don't have to worry about in qualifying, that is. In the race it will be a whole different thing. And yeah, we see them now putting their first laps in. So probably won't see the best lap times being driven right now, because you always gotta have that one banker lap, don't you?
You do, and I always say that you don't necessarily need the lap first and foremost. You just have to put in a lap as such. You don't have to go out there in the first 2 minutes of the session and put in an all-purple lap time that's going to absolutely wipe the socks off everyone out there on circuit. Just put a lap down that you can base off, that you know is valid, right? That's the most important thing. It's a valid lap time, because 9 times out of 10, even if you have a valid lap time down, you're not going to be starting last. Someone is going to make a mistake. Someone's going to have to start from the back, one way or another. And of course, the problem if you don't get a bad lap time in for the first lap is that then you have to do it on the second lap. And then if you don't do it on the second lap, you have to do it on the last lap. And what it does is postpone the stage in the session where you can push and you can give it some beans and you can find the track limits and you can give it a little bit more on the exit of the corner. And it stops you from chasing that absolute optimum lap time. And especially here at Monza, there's not a lot of corners for you to make up that time, which means you have to maximize each and every single one. If you mess up the first one, then it puts a lot more pressure on the second one, and then obviously the pressure on the second one makes you more likely to mess up the third one, and before you know it, you're starting at the back, which I suppose, to be fair, sometimes at Monza is not necessarily a bad thing.
Indeed. Especially since we have nothing is really decided in the qualifying. There are a few points up for grabs in qualifying, as we see Dominic Lada now putting down the first lap. So 156.3, that is a very good lap time. One of the all-time best drivers, Nico Nüninghoff, has done a 155.8. So it's only 5/10 of the overall best lap time in the first banker lap. But we have the reverse grid for races 2 and 3 as well. So even if you have a bad qualifying position for race 1 and you can't really make up in that race, there's still a lot for you to gain in race 2 and vice versa.
Yeah, of course. Plenty of opportunities. And to be fair, Monza is a very raceable circuit. I mean, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes track position is a lot more important on some days. Sometimes it's not as important. It all depends as to who you're racing, what you're racing, how powerful the slipstream is, how easy it is to overtake in your respective class. When it comes to touring cars, they're very raceable cars. You know, they've not got peak braking performances, which means the braking zones, compared to, say, a GT3 or a Praga or whatever, is going to be a little bit longer, which means there's a lot more of a range for you to sort of use that braking zone with. You can push it a bit more. You can brake 5 meters later and just about get away with it, which allows you to have a bit of a race. Say in GT3s or, you know, dare I say, sort of a faster open wheel cars, it's a little bit more difficult because the margins are so slim. Touring cars, they can absolutely send it, just about get away with it. barely keep on the track, and off they go. At the moment, though, for Ladler, yeah, 1.2 seconds clear of Alex Emma, who, of course, is joining him there on the front row. A little bit of a spaced out grid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in for a bad race. I think as the session goes on, drivers will get a little bit closer, and hopefully the slipstream going to keep them all in contention.
Yeah, also Remco Major and Joachim Thunder, two of the, I think, bigger players in this race, haven't set a valid lap time yet, so they are yet to set one. And also, Nico Nüninghoff unfortunately couldn't make it for the race today. That means we will have a new RCE winner, because the last two races were, you could say, dominated, but yeah, basically dominated by Nico Nüninghoff, as Remco Major puts it on the front row. And Elmar Kurbanov goes best with a 55.5. That is an insane lap time for those cars.
Yeah, well, what is that? 0.8 quicker as things stand. A sensational lap time to have already in the bag, 55.3. We'll keep an eye on that, of course, as the session goes on. We are already ticking towards the halfway point of it. I think we're already over halfway through this session. So yeah, for Kurbanov, he's put himself into a very, very good position. But Dominic Ladler, of course, up there on the front row. A lot that you can do with the front row here at Monza. I always say you either want to start on the front row or the last row. Anything in between and you're asking for trouble. Indeed.
It's turn 1 will be interesting, and we have 3 times turn 1. So let's see how this will play out. We've got the question from Roddy Burns, who was here 2 weeks ago in Daytona, when the next schedule will be announced. And as said previously, we will talk about the next schedule as well as a different announcement at the end of the stream, so around about an hour of running. We will also announce it in the Discord, of course, when we will be talking about that, so you probably won't miss it. But welcome to the stream, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, hello to everyone that's watching along. Do make sure, obviously, for whatever respective chat you're in, whether that's on the RENNSPORT or, of course, Lino's, that you're saying hello, you know, give us your thoughts, feelings, queries, questions, really whatever tickles your fancy, because, yeah, it's only us in the commentary booth. We don't bite, or, you know, at least most of the time. Find out, I don't know, say hello in the in the Twitch chat, sorry, in the Twitch chat. Don't try the YouTube chat, because you won't be very successful. Come say hi in the Twitch chat. Yeah, give us a shout. Let us know how you're doing, who you're rooting for. If you wish you were out there on circuit, what's the best thing you like about RENNSPORT? I don't know. Put it in the Twitch chat and we'll have a look. Tim Ireland out there on circuit at the moment, currently sat in P7, of course in car number 7 as well, into the Parabolica, and is looking to improve on the time that currently sees him in P7, 1:59.489 for him to beat. 8 minutes completed in the session. Kurbanov still out in front by a good 0.8 of a second as well. So Dominic Ladler up there on the front row, Mahor and Emma, that's the front 2 rows as things stand. Then you go towards the back end of the field. No improvement for Tim Ireland, but I think he's there about to start another lap and seeing to, well, if he can improve. But already into turn number 1, you can see there's a lot to be gained. Well, I was going to say for his racing line, but also for sending it in far too deep. A couple of people, I believe that's going to be the session over for them. They're not out on circuit. They don't have enough time to complete a lap. Kurbanov out there looking to improve on his time as if he needed to improve any more on a 55.5.
Yeah, but you can keep trying. There's nothing holding you back from doing so. And there's also nothing to lose if you keep trying. Of course, also has the advantage of just staying in the groove for the race. Yeah, it doesn't have many disadvantages in the sim racing world compared to the real life world.
Now working his way through Ascari, there's Dominic Ladler as well. He's got 0.8 of an advantage to gain, which is quite steep at a circuit with so little corners as Monza, but the corners that you do have, you have got to be committed through. Don't quite think that's racing speed, so I don't think he's going to be able to put a lap time in, and in fact does pull himself into the pit lane. We'll run you through the final grid classification in just a moment. There you can see it's Kurbanov on pole position ahead of Dominic Ladler, who will join him on row 1. The Dutchman and the German, of course, is Mahor and Thunder, complete row 2. Then comes the Turk rounding off the top 5. Ireland there in P6. Wallad and Anya Maki, the front 4 rows ahead of Alex Emma, who unfortunately rounds off the grid there in P9. I don't think was quite able to put a valid lap in. Moments away then from starting, 15 minutes for race number 1. What are we expecting going into turn 1 then, Lino?
Hard to tell. It will be a bit of a different experience while I'm fighting a bit with the HUD. However, we have 9 TCR cars fairly close together. I'm sure we will see some action into turn 1.
I don't doubt it one bit. Well, ladies and gentlemen, moments away then from getting another RENNSPORT community event. Of course, the front-wheel drive series here at Monza. It should be a lot of carnage, a lot of chaos. Kurbanov and Ladler, the front row. The 5 red lights are on, and the long run towards the Rettifido chicane. It's lights out, and we are underway here in Italy. A decent start from the front row, and a pretty basic start, I think, from everyone in the midfield as well. Side by side, of course, that fight for second place. You can see the Dutchman of Mahor trying to pull himself alongside of Ladler. I think momentarily got himself ahead. A clean start for the Audi RS3, albeit very late on the brakes going into turn number 1. There goes Ladler through on the inside line, catapults himself up into the race lead, and it just goes to show that pole position by 8 tenths doesn't mean diddly squat if you don't get a good start.
There have been a few issues behind. We see a big gap to Joachim Thunder in P5. But not sure what happened there, hard to tell. However, Dominic Ladler, as you said, leading the race, and we have a close pack of 4 in front who made it through.
Side by side potentially for the race lead as well going into the first Lesmo. Kurbanov immediately on the counter attack, but Dominic Ladler not going to be waiting around to seize this opportunity. A long time to defend though, as already alongside the Audi RS3 into the second of the 2. Not quite able to pull that move off, and there goes Remco Mahor as well as he tries to capitalise. Got the supreme run, doesn't really know which line to choose, inside or outside going into the Ascari chicane, decides to tuck into his fellow Hyundai Elantra's slipstream into Ascari. Who's going to be the best beneficiary around the outside is going to be the pole sitter. Bit of contact between the two of them, but a sensational move nonetheless to see him reclaim that P1 that he of course worked so hard for in qualifying. Already able to put up about a half a second lead ahead of Ladler and Mahor. The Dutchman of course unable to capitalise in the early moments. What it has done is allow Alex Emmer, who to be fair, starting from P9 already into P4 and with a shout of a podium on the horizon as well. Not exactly a bad way to round off the first lap.
Indeed, and now the slipstreaming starts. We didn't have much slipstream before the straights, but now even a 4/10 advantage might not be that big if you claw in so much speed on the long straight. It's not called the Temple of Speed for any other reason than that, basically.
Yeah, well, it's a very fast circuit, funnily enough, particularly in its older form and this current form as well. A lot of it spent at full throttle, thinking about going side by side. That fight for second, Ladler versus Mahor. Emma now rounding it up. We've got the Audi RS3 being chased by the Hyundai Elantras, of course 2, 3 and 4 behind. A fairly even split between both the Audi and the Hyundai, so nice to see obviously that both cars fairly equal, and essentially just depends as to what car you like to drive the most, which is always the way you want to have things. You don't necessarily want to be driving a car that you're miserable in purely because it's the quicker one. So nice to see that there's a nice even split and everyone enjoying it. There's Joachim Thunder out on circuit, of course being cheered on by the Twitch chat as well, running quite nicely in P5. And also the other driver being cheered for there, Dominic Ladler up in P2. So, well, at least the eggs are in the right basket and the Twitch chat knows who to cheer for.
Indeed. I mean, that's relations building up in the community, which is always nice to see. But, yeah, Kurbanov just slightly pulling away from Ladler. Is a long race, so tire wear will begin to kick in quite a few laps. Will be interesting to see how Kurbanov behaves on those tires, because we've not seen him that many times on the broadcast servers.
Well, I'm sure we'll find out, and this is the best spotlight in order to showcase what you're capable of. Kurbanov able to build nearly a second advantage. Of course, no DRS or anything involved in these touring cars, just pure brunt force and of course slipstream power, and you're probably looking around about 8 tenths to be getting a whiff of it, or at least a decent whiff as such. So Kurbanov nearly on the fringes of escaping, and the good, or the good, the bad, I suppose, of Monza depends how you look at it. Depends what end of the whether you're the receiving end or the giving end of it. It's so easy to, once you are out of that slipstream range, to build such a huge gap from it because, well, particularly in Kurbanov's case, being so much quicker than the rest of the pack, is the fact that once he's out of it, he can then spread his pace that he showed in qualifying without fear of slipstream basically giving everyone else exactly what they need to stay in contention. As oh my goodness me, huge incident going into the red Filo chicane. I believe that's between Tim Ireland and this man right here, Mildusu, going into turn number 1 and turn number 2. Not entirely sure as to exactly what happened there, but definitely didn't look overly great as to have that big of a crash on a straight. No further comment from me, Lino.
Yeah, it was hard to see. It kind of looked like both wanted to go into the same space. Tim Island started looking to the inside, and Ilkay trying to look to the outside, and then yeah, hitting on the corner rear end panels of the cars, front wheel drive all the way on the front. It just goes round. There's nothing you can do for both sides.
Yeah, once they're gone. They're gone. I mean, to be fair, a lot of times, if you get oversteer in a front-wheel drive car, you just slam the throttle on, and spinning the front tires actually self-corrects, of course, the front-wheel drive drift. But once the car is completely out of control, and it's not a case of just you've put a little bit too much, steering angle going into a corner or whatever, or you've let off the brakes too quickly. Once it is just a case you have just been pit maneuvered effectively, not intentionally, of course, not accusing him of a foul play or whatever, but trying to occupy the same space, and at that speed, you're not going to be able to do much, unfortunately. And the Temple of Speed, of course, notorious for claiming victims sometimes with how high speed it is, how fine the margins are. And yeah, that seems to appear to have been the case. Joachim Thunder still running quite nicely there in P5, albeit fairly away off the back of the rest of the field. And to be fair, the majority of them fairly spaced out at the moment. We're at that stage in the race, aren't we, where everyone is just sort of settling into their rhythm and trying to find their space, particularly out in front. The Russian driver, of course, of Kurbanov, 2 seconds clear now of Ladler. However, he's going to be having to battle his way with the Flying Dutchman, of course, of Mahor, who is putting a little bit of pressure on him. Only 8/10 back. One small mistake, and that can all change.
Indeed, it can go very fast, and it's easy to make a mistake as well on Monza. Just go slightly into the gravel trap, and you, especially with front-wheel drive, are just going straight into it. So there's always that kind of risk you take when pushing to a high degree. Ladler, of course, being a very fast driver, and he knows what he is doing. Remco Major as well being a very fast driver. A lot of esports experience as well. So it would be an interesting battle. Ladler, fun fact, has been on the podium on each race so far in the Renn community events. P2 in the Porsche Cup, P3 at Daytona. So he's obviously looking forward to making 3 podium finishes in a row. Of course, in this case, not being a podium finish in terms of a race finish, but in terms of points. But so far, it's looking good for him.
And touching on the points, of course, there is a championship kind of ish here, effectively, essentially isolated in Monza, of course, where they'll get points for qualifying 3, 2, 1 for the top 3, and then they'll get points for race 1, race 2, and race 3. No prizes or anything. It's just a case of, I don't know, maybe they want to put it in their Twitter bio. Yeah, I won a RENNSPORT community event week or whatever. Who knows? But yeah, a little bit of pride on the line. And maybe something they can rub into each other, as of course you build relationships, you build friendships in the RENNSPORT community, and it's always something, sort of that friendly competition, that banter that people like to try and build, and yeah, obviously entices more people to get involved when there is some healthy competition on the line. And yeah, points are a nice way to do that. Even if there isn't a prize at the end of it, and it is just for pride, knowing that you are racing for points sort of gives you that little bit of extra motivation to maybe give it some, go for that P2. Get that extra position, or push that a little bit harder in qualifying to get an extra point.
Yeah, indeed, and small points here and there will add up, especially over 3 races. So you want to take everything with you that you can. It's not a matter of, yeah, we'll just, P2 gives me 12 points, P3 gives me 10 points, so I don't push. Yeah, of course, we'll push and try to get those 2 points, because at the end of this, those could be deciding factors.
Exactly that. And well, if you are racing with your mates, of course, a couple of the RENNSPORT team racing out there, of course, with bragging rights in the office or whatever, you want to give it some. You want to go after them. You want to be the top dog. Kurbanov making a small mistake through the Ascari chicane. You can see all started after the first apex and just snowballed after that point. Still not slowing him down too much, though, as he's still 3 seconds clear of the rest of the pack. We are firmly into the second half of this race, just 6 minutes left on the clock. So going to translate that to be around about 3 laps. I would say 3 laps at the line. It is a little bit nip and tuck. They might just be able to scrape a fourth. We will see. The gap 2.5. I think Ladler able to claw back a little bit of time. Of course, not enough really to be much of a challenge at this late on in the race. We've got, of course, Abu Walad out there on circuit as well. He's in P8, not a million miles away from Onyemaki. They're in 7th, so they're all running fairly close. You can see the 2 Audi RS3s keeping each other company. I think at this point, unless there's any drastic mistakes out on circuit, which, don't get me wrong, can still happen, but I think this is fairly much going to set the grid, of course, for races 2, race 2 going forward. Race 2 will then set the grid for race 3. What will be interesting is to see how Kurbanov, Ladler and Mahor all find their way through the field going into that second race, because, of course, it's a complete reverse.
Indeed. The race 2 will probably be the most interesting. Race 3 might still be the same case, depending on how well they can get through traffic, but approaching to turn 1, you want to gain as much as possible. That's just how most sim racers work. But you've got all the fast people in the back. There might be a lot of surprises. And we see right now Ladler has a 2.5 second disadvantage to Kurbanov. But if Kurbanov gets stuck in traffic for a few corners and Ladler gets brilliant through the traffic, or Mauer or Alex Emmer, they can just build a gap at the start. And those seconds that you might gain will be very valuable near the end of the race.
Even more here at Monza, I suppose, than potentially any other circuit, with sort of not necessarily the lack of skill that it takes to be quick at Monza, but how do I phrase this without completely undermining those that are quick at Monza? I'm trying to be diplomatic. It's a lot easier to be on the pace here at Monza because, of course, there are less opportunities to make up time. Each corner in isolation is an opportunity to gain time. There's a braking zone, a turning in point, an acceleration zone, and that's where the top dogs in esports make their money as such. When there's a lot of straights, you can't exactly do a straight line a lot better than anyone else. I mean, unless you've got a bigger engine, but of course that's not the case. They're all in touring cars. There's not a lot that you can do in terms of gaining time on other people. So the less corners there are, in theory, the closer the gap should be between drivers. Now, what you were touching on in the field spread side of things, those that start at the front for race 2 and 3 have got, say, a good 5-minute bedding in process for those at the back. They fight their way through. By the point they actually get themselves, say, into P3 or P4, the top 2 in the race have already ran off with things and have built, even if it's only a 3 or 4 second gap, that's still a lot of time considering how difficult it is to make up time on a lap-by-lap basis here at Monza, unless, of course, there's spins or things in the mix. So what I'm trying to say is get good and get through the field quite quick.
Indeed, it's a different kind of skill to master. So, yeah, different drivers will behave differently. It's also a lot about aggression and, of course, about the people you are racing against. So, hard to tell, hard to predict.
And, well, I mean, when it comes to racing in general, there's not really much that you can do in predictions. I mean, Kurbanov looks very safe and secure, but his PC could unplug itself. Well, it probably won't unplug itself, but, you know, it could have an error or something that disconnects him from the race, and boom, there you go. Ladler is the one that's able to win. You never know until you've crossed the checkered flag. And while right now, of course, he feels safe. He's out there. He's driving phenomenally. Look at the way that he handles himself and handled himself throughout the duration of this race. He's done an excellent job. But that doesn't mean that he's immune to the indiscriminate bad luck that can sometimes happen when it comes to sim racing, to motor racing in general. You are never in the safe zone, and that's where complacency and things can start to seep their way into the mix. We've got Tim Ireland here closing in on the back of Abu Walad, of course, the fight for 8th place. Tim Ireland at the moment is sat on provisional pole position. When it comes to points, I mean, if he gets ahead of Walad, he's still going to be gaining a point in this race, but then also able to still start on the front row for race 2. So for him, it's a no-brainer, really, to be getting after that 8th place. Indeed.
It's, I mean, Tim was quite far up the order before the incident with Okay Muldusu. So, yeah, it's a good call for him to just go flat out because he also got nothing to lose. Meanwhile, we should be on the last lap because we won't finish, or Elmar won't be able to finish another lap before the 15-minute mark.
So about half a lap left to go in this race then. He's just got to keep it clean for a little bit longer. Kurbanov then, he's got the Ascari chicane, the run to the Parabolica, and then the run to the line to claim the first victory here in Monza. That, of course, is going to be bagging himself a decent couple of points, 15 points to be exact, on top of the 3 that he scored in qualifying. So already going to be looking to stake a claim at the front of this mini championship for the RENNSPORT community event. Of course, the front-wheel drive series here at Monza. Of course, for those cheering off, Elmar Kurbanov, you're going to be delighted to see that he's going to convert pole into victory today. Of course, it wasn't easy. That mistake going into the Rettifilo chicane for the first time did see Dominik Ladler overtake him, but a fight back from the Russian saw him now in this position out of the Parabolica. The run to the line keeps it nice and tucked up to the inside, weaves his way across the line. Victorious for race number 1 of 3 here in Monza. Nicely done from the Russian driver, Dominik Ladler, and then Remco Mahor round off the podium, again bagging themselves a couple of points for qualifying, and then of course the bonus points, well, I suppose the actual points for the race finish result itself. Alex Emmer, of course, from last place on the grid, works his way up into 4th quite nicely. Joachim Thunder rounds off the top 5, will run your way through the entirety of the finishing order once everyone has crossed the checkered flag. All in all, though, not necessarily a bad way to start off this evening's proceedings of racing. That first couple of laps, really, with Kurbanov and Ladler were really, really good, good racing, and a good sign of things to come.
Indeed. And as we said previously, now it will be very interesting. We've got Abu Wada and Tim Island on the front row, and Elmar Kurbanov all the way on row 5. Meanwhile, Tim Island actually got past Abu Wada because he made a mistake in the last lap. So Tim Island gets himself another point for the final standings. And that's everyone across the line for race 1.
There are the results you can see. Elmar Kurbanov, the first winner of the evening, ahead of Ladler, and then of course Remco Mahor on the podium, and that is all going to be flipped going into race number 2 in a couple of moments time. 15 minutes back on the clock, of course, so we're going to be back racing once again. It's going to be Walad from Ireland, Anya Maki, and then of course Muldusu, the front 2 rows. Joachim Thunder, middle of the road in race 1, starts middle of the road in race 2. Alex Emmer from Charge from 9th to 4th sees him start 6th, ahead of Mahor, Ladler and Kurbanov, who rounds off on the 5th row of the field. You can see them all lined up, ready to go once again. We're going to be straight into the action. Not really much transition time in between, so making sure that the adrenaline is still fired up and they're ready to go for another 15 minutes of racing action. Thank you to everyone that's been watching along. If you are now just tuning in, what a time to get yourself involved. The 5 red lights about to illuminate themselves, and we'll be back underway once again. RENNSPORT community events, of course, the front-wheel drive series here at Monza. It was a fantastic race 1. The reverse grid race 2 is definitely going to be something to behold, I'm sure. The fast drivers at the back, the drivers that didn't quite do so well in race 1 at the front. We are underway once again, and a perfect start there from P2. Of course, from Tim Island, already pulling alongside Walad on that run in towards turn 1. Beautiful start from the Elantra, able to get the jump at the lights and into the race lead. Kurbanov already up a couple of places as well as the Audi RS3 runs his way in towards turn 1. Bit of contact between the 2 leaders as well through the Rettifilo chicanes turns 1 and 2. Tim Island able to hold his nerve quite nicely. Bit of contact and argy-bargy in the background, as you can see. Couple of drivers trying to pick their way through the carnage. Dominik Ladler trying to keep Muldusu at bay. Of course, Anya Maki dropping down to 8th or 9th place, I should say, side by side through Curva Grande. Alex Emmer, of course, trying to make some places up early on in 5th place, but tagged round, unfortunately, taken too much off the exit of the circuit. Huge contact there between Alex Emmer and, I believe, that might well have been Kurbanov. There is, of course, Muldusu getting involved, unfortunately, a victim in all of that skirmish. Oh my goodness
it indeed
me,
was
what
Kurbanov. And this is huge for Ladler and for Majora, for Thunder. Also for Tim Island, who's leading this race with 1.7 seconds. It was, again, the same thing we saw between Tim Island and Okay Muldusu in race 1. just not able to, or not judging the space correctly, and then ever so slightly touching the rear quarter panel, tipping the car on. There's nothing Alex Emma could have done in that situation. He was headed straight for the barriers. Meanwhile, Dominik Ladler going down the inside of Joachim Thunder for P3. He's chasing after the front pack. But what a start to race 2, and this is exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, you can never feel safe when it comes to racing. Of course, Kurbanov probably came into this race full of confidence, ready to go, ready to carve his way through. And unfortunately, one small mistake, whether that's his fault, whether that's Emma's fault, of course, we'll leave that up to you in the community as to who was more at fault. I would put that down more to a racing incident. A little bit wide there from, of course, I believe that's the P5 runner. Of course, there he is, Abu Walad. Of course, the pole position sitter, now down to P5, a little bit wide at the Parabolica. But yeah, small mistake, and unfortunately detrimental consequences for Kurbanov. I suppose the good thing is that it's happened right at the start of the race, which means they've got the next 40 minutes to make up for it. Tim Ireland leading the way, however, now under pressure from the Flying Dutchman of Remco Mahor, who's going to be eyeing up that race lead in a few moments' time. You can see a fantastic exit off of the Retofilo chicane into, of course, Curva Grande. He's going to decide to go the long way round. Of course, hopefully these two keep it a little bit cleaner. Tim Ireland, how interested is he going to be in trying to defend this race lead, or is he going to allow some swift passage through for Remco Mahor? A bit of contact still under the braking zone. The Dutchman nicely on the inside. And for Tim Ireland, I don't quite think that was his battle. So Mahor making the most of race 2, early progress, and into the race lead.
Meanwhile, Kurbanov got past Abu Walad for P5. He's chasing down. But even if he manages to get into P3, let's say, or P4, this will still be valuable points he will lose to Dominik Ladler and Remco Mahor.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, as things stand, of course, Kurbanov was on 18 points, and of course we'll be looking to lose a couple. We'll get into that in just a second, because here comes Dominik Ladler on the move for P2. Bit of argy-bargy into Ascari. Nicely done from Tim Ireland just to keep his foot in the long way round. Edges him out though. Bit of contact, bit of hesitancy, and unfortunately for the front roaster to the P2 starter, Tim Ireland, he's round on the exit of the Ascari chicane. That promotes Joachim Thunder into P3. And where can we attribute the blame there? Because it's not necessarily Ladler's fault, because I think they backed out of that one. I think Ireland was just a little bit discouraged, a little bit shaky, and in the end went a little bit wide on the exit.
Yeah, it looked like Tim Ireland was just not too confident into the exit of Ascari, which Dominik Ladler didn't really anticipate that he would slow down there. And yeah, just a slight bit of contact, rear goes round.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, and at that speed, it's very easy for things to go drastically wrong. Of course, no bad news for this man, Remco Mahor, leading the way really nicely in P1. I have just noticed that the vast majority of the field are all in one voice chat, and that is both a great thing and also maybe not a great thing if things come to blows in the race. It's great for banter and maybe trying to play some psychological battles with your rivals and egg them on and have a bit of a laugh, but when things go wrong and it's just silence, that's when it gets a little bit awkward. Hopefully everyone's nice and civil over there, as they're all looking to have a lot of fun. There is a nice up and under from Elmar Kurbanov, who's now going to be looking to pick his way into 4th place. In fact, actually 3rd place with Joachim Thunder to the inside of the first of the two Lesmos. Of course, Kurbanov is through nicely and up into P3. So making some good ground back in this race. Like I say, the good thing is that his incident happened right at the start, giving him plenty of time to fight his way through. And it's not it's not exactly like the man is slow or needing to improve some pace, given what we saw in qualifying in race 1.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, for Joachim Thunder, this is also quite good news, because Alexander Ammer is he made his way up the order, is now back into P6. But still, he will gain on him. He will gain on Tim Ireland and other people that would have gained on him in this race normally. So for him, this might be a good chance to get a bit of a cushion for race 3.
I think so, and it's all going to ride on the championship. Of course, we will update you with the points. Now, coming into this race, it was Elmar on 18th, from Dominic there in 14th, Remco Mahor there in P3, of course, P3 in qualifying and P3 in the race. Be interesting to see how that's going to be subject to change at the end of this one, with Mahor leading from Ladler and, of course, Kurbanov. So effectively just reversed of what they were in race 1. The saving grace for Kurbanov is that he was able to bag a couple of extra points in qualifying and, well, has done great damage limitation in this race to bring his weight back up into P3. So mighty competition in store. 2 seconds between the top 2 in the race. Be interesting to see if Ladler is able to close down that 2-second gap to Mahor. So we've got a lead fight on the cards once again. Also be interesting to see what Kurbanov can do. He's about 2.5 seconds back on Dominic Ladler as well. So we'll see as to whether or not the Russian can gain some time. Because to be fair, the winning margin in race 1 was 2.5 seconds. That's the gap between Ladler and Kurbanov right now. It's not going to be impossible for Elmar to find his way up in a second.
Yeah, and whatever he does with Ladler, it will just benefit Mayer, because Ladler, I can't imagine, and that's Mark Onimachi losing the rear end, entering the second of the chicanes.
Oh, who's that? Got
That
around in the background.
Mark Onimachi. It's just probably just a bit of lift of oversteer into the left-hander, and then hitting the curb, offsetting the car even more. Fairly easy to do in front-wheel drive cars. I just want to mention Abu Walad in P5 still. He has Alexander Emmer behind him, and he will probably catch up over the remaining 7.5 minutes. But even if he finishes P6, that would still be very good for his points counter, because he's currently last in the standings with 2 points to his name, and P5 would currently get him 6 points. P6 would still be 5 points. That would definitely help him make up some positions in the standings.
Yeah, helped, of course, by the reverse grid pole. And to be fair, he's done a brilliant job of maintaining it. I don't necessarily think the expectation was to finish on the top step in race 2. I think it was more a good stepping stone that he's got a bit of a cushion to fall back a couple of places, but not necessarily finish towards the back end of the grid, like was the case in race 1. He's been able to maximize his opportunities in race 2 and rely on that reverse grid to score him some good points, but he's still out there on circuit, still driving the car to a high standard. And here, once again, is a fight between Tim Ireland and, of course, Onyemaki as well in P8 and P9. So unfortunately for Tim Ireland, despite a fantastic start to take the lead into turn 1, he's now fighting for the scraps at the back end of the field.
But let's not forget, he will have another shot at it in just, let's say 7 minutes time for the third race, which will again be reverse grid. So maybe he'll have a third chance at glory. Let's see what he can make out of that one.
Yeah, third time's the charm for him, and would be liking to do himself proud. Coming the end of this race. The good thing is, of course, it's just a community event, a little bit of fun, a little bit of opportunity for these drivers to get to know each other, build some relationships, and of course, if they're in a voice chat, in the RENNSPORT Discord, whatever, just have a laugh and get to know each other and build friendships, because that's the beautiful thing about sim racing, and it's something that, again, obviously, from someone in my occupation, knows firsthand, the people you meet, the experiences you have through a platform like sim racing. So many people I wouldn't know had I not pursued, or hang on, there's a word there somewhere, gone for a career in commentating, and we'll go with that one, because of just the experience that you have, the relationships you build, the conversations you have with people. It's a great platform for you to make friends.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, racing is, if you like it or not, friendship and contacts are a huge part of sim racing. Otherwise, endurance races wouldn't be possible without driver swaps if you don't like each other. Might be a bit hard. Me, my Dominic Lada taking a lot of curb, driving on 2 wheels there. Some other games you get skill points for that, unfortunately not in RENNSPORT so far.
Maybe we need a special mode, drift mode.
Yeah, just for front-wheel drive cars.
Just for front-wheel drive cars, yeah, drift mode, where you just yank the handbrake and hope for the best. Yeah, drift mode, style points, and then you know what? That would be good. I would definitely watch that. Some people trying to purposefully drift front-wheel drive. I mean, you can't exactly drift. You can maybe get a slide. I was about to say power slide, but that's more for the exits, and that is firmly for rear-wheel drive cars. front-wheel drive cars, it's hard to put the power down and slide unless you want to slide forwards into a tree. Rear-wheel drive cars, though, it's fine. You can slam the power down and get the rear end out. But no, for front-wheel drive cars, it's more just a case of you can do a Scandi flick. I suppose that would work.
Yeah, indeed. Just power out of the turn after pulling handbrake. That's pretty much how you do it in front-wheel drive cars. Or if there's snow, don't try this at home, kids, but I know some of you might have. Pull handbrake and just full throttle it, and it's basically drifting. But of course, don't do that on public roads. However,
all insurance claims directed towards Lino for all your damages for endorsing the behaviour at home. Is that right?
Pretty much, yes.
He's going to take responsibility. So you're all free to go and try. Please don't lose your licenses. That would be great. But if they do lose their licenses in the real world, that entices them more to play RENNSPORT because it's the only driving they're going to get.
Yeah,
So,
and they might end up in battles like this one, building up right here, because Dominic Lala has clawed in time on Remco Meyer big time, and Elmar Komanov is just 1.6 seconds behind. This might end up in a huge showdown, because we've got around about 2 or 3 laps left, probably 3, including this one. It will be super tight.
it will be indeed. The lesson learned then, ladies and gentlemen, lose your licenses so you can come be in brilliant lead battles like this one live, of course, on the RENNSPORT Twitch channel for the RENNSPORT community events. Three-way fight for the lead because Elmar Karbanov is right in the mix. It's a two-way fight for the lead between the Hyundai Elantras, and then, of course, the third in the Audi RS3, making up the final step on the podium. Dominic Ladler done a brilliant job of closing in all of that time, but he might be immediately looking to go for the move into the first of the two Lesmos. Not quite close enough on this occasion, but with only a couple laps left to go, should be looking very strong for a very good finish between the top three.
Yeah, we've got basically the reverse order of the podium of the first race. Remco Meyer is leading in this case, Elmar Komanov is sitting in P3, and they are getting closer and closer to each other with Slipstream. And we might just be entering the last lap, next lap, because we are already past the 13-minute mark, a lap taking a bit under 2 minutes. So I highly doubt they will be able to do another one, unless they engage rocket mode or something. But this will go right down to the wire, possibly to the last of the long straights.
Yeah, very much so. So 13 of the 15 minutes completed. Karbanov looking to the outside of Parabolica, not quite able to find a way through. On the exit of Parabolica, though, this is where time can be gained. He puts his foot flat to the floor, and the Russian might well be able to have a bit of a look going into the first chicane, starting what could well be the penultimate lap of this race. I think Ladler's going to know that, and immediately defensive going into the chicane. Karbanov is going to leave it as late as possible, leave it out to the left-hand side, try and go the long way around. Of course, this is going to be helping Mahor, who's leading the way. Little bit of argy-bargy, nearly forced off the road, up over the curb as Karbanov still side-by-side on the exit. It's going to be a case of who can put their foot to the floor first. That is going to go the way of Karbanov, who gets the exit. However, the shorter line round Curva Grande is going to go the way of Dominic Ladler. He's going to get edged out, though, and Karbanov, remarkably after the first lap, into second.
Indeed, and he 1.6 seconds if he can make up that disadvantage to Remco. Oh, and Ladler around the outside. What? That was a huge attempt. Mad respect to him for trying that. You rarely see that. Nearly made it work as well. But also, gotta keep it... Oh, and big hit on the rear axle there for Elmar Karbanov.
Yeah, huge little bit of a twitch. Able to keep it under wraps, though, and effectively hands this race to Remco Mahor, who I don't think, unless he completely makes a mistake, is going to be touched going into the final lap of this race. I believe this is going to be the penultimate one, so one more to go. Just got to keep it nice and clean. Karbanov, though, P2, P1, either way, he's still going to be leaving this race with the lead in the championship. And at the start of it, obviously, with the remarkable crash that did ensue, didn't necessarily think was going to happen. Dominic Ladler, unfortunately, very wide off the exit of Ascari, but nonetheless, a remarkable drive from the Russian to find his way into the position he is now.
Indeed. That is a big drive, especially coming from that far back. It was not like he was close behind them for the majority of the race, far from the opposite actually. But Remco Meyer is coming across the line to take victory in the second race. Congratulations to him. Elmar Kobanov in P3 and Dominik Lada locking out the podium.
Yeah, so we didn't quite manage to get to the final lap in the end. In fact, it wasn't actually close at all, 47 seconds off. So Remco Mahor victorious in race number 2 from Kurbanov and Ladler at the podium. We'll update the points in just a moment, let you know where things are standing in that regard. And yeah, crossing the line now is going to be Joachim Thunder, Alex Emmer to round off the top 5. Behind that, you've got Anja Markey, Tim Ireland, Abu Walad, who unfortunately didn't quite get the top 5 in the end. And then the Turk of Mildusu as well, rounding off in P9. Once again, that's going to be flipped on its head as we're moments away already from the last race of the evening. It's very much flown by well, we've had a very enjoyable time here for the RENNSPORT community event. Of course, the front-wheel drive series here at Monza, so if you do want to get yourself involved, definitely do. And see what it's all about. But yeah, certainly this evening hasn't disappointed. Just waiting for the last couple of drivers to cross the line. A fantastic race, though, it must be said, for the Dutchman to capitalise early on and then, well, yeah, make the most of his opportunities and run away with things at the end.
And it was a very strategic race in, one sense. But of course, for him, a bit lucky that Ladler and Kobanov got into their little trading paint session. But a victory is a victory in the end, and that puts Remco Major second overall. And Elmar sitting on 30 points, 4 points ahead of Remco Major and 6 points clear of Dominik Ladler. They are pretty much cleared for the podium. Alex, Emma and Joachim Thunder having 14 points respectively in P4 and 5.
So looking quite close then in the championship. Of course, for Remco Mahor, he's going to be probably eyeing up Dominik Edler, of course, for P2. But it's not necessarily out of the question for him to get after Kurbanov. The ideal way he's going to do that, being 4 points behind, is going to be to go and win and hope that the Russian is going to be at least P3 or below, because there are no points for fast lap or anything like that. So it's straight done on position. Well, the grid once again set. The 5 red light's going to come on. Race number 3, the final 15-minute session of the evening, about to get itself underway in Monza. The RENNSPORT community event is back underway in Italy. Great start from the front row once again. Let's see what our front runners are going to be doing there at the back as they hurdle their way towards the chicane for the first time, for the last time as well, in towards turn number 1 then. And defensive, of course, going is the Turkish driver in the Elantra. Bit of contact in the background in that fight for P3. Able to keep it relatively clean, though. Bit of a sideways moment on the exit. And it's gotten a little bit tight too close for comfort. They're going its way through turn number 2. Not quite able to make the progress that we would have expected early on, but settling their way into the race quite nicely, of course, for the leaders and for everyone else settling themselves in behind. There you can see the way that things are looking up. Remco Mahor up there already into P1, which is...
Oh, and Awala in trouble further back. Seems like there was contact before that. But as you see, Remco already up into P1 and Elmar Kobanov P2. We also had a nice split on the grid with Hyundai all the way on one side and Audi's on the other.
And, well, yeah, out onto circuit, of course, for the final 15-minute race. Mahor, of course, taking the win in race 2, up into the lead for race number 3, looking very, very strong, of course, battling away with of course, of Kurbanov there in P2, Dominik Ladler there in 3rd, Emma and Thunder the top 5 as they all set their way into the race for the final 15 minutes. Anja Markey up to P6 from P9 on the grid. Let's see what the Audi RS3 is able to do on that run in towards the Parabolica, and on the inside dropping to 7th versus Tim Ireland, who's unfortunately looking to make amends and redeem himself for race 2. Of course, not making the best of progress in order to do that, but Anja Markey once again on the inside. I think also very, very close for the race leaders. Kurbanov is going to be searching for that race win going in to the first braking zone. There you can see Kurbanov on the left. He's going to be looking to go to the outside. Mahor forced to defend on the inside, very late on the brakes, but letting off just a little bit, aiming himself for the apex in order to defend. But Kurbanov, the long way round, beautifully done. Edges out the Elantra, though, nearly off the road. Kurbanov back into the race lead.
Yeah, what a move. There was around the outside, forcing Mario to take as much of the inside as possible. Of course, you might say he forced him off the track, but on the other hand, it's TCR racing. It's kind of, yeah, part of that. However, back into the lead, and this will be huge for him, because as he's proven in the first race, he is the fastest car on track.
Looks to be. And, well, is that going to be the way the race goes? Is he just going to continue to pull away from here? We will find out. Dominic Ladler there in P3, not a million miles away from Remco Mahor. Of course, it's Dominic Ladler versus Mahor in the championship. As things stand, they are 2 points apart in the championship. And as things stand in the race, they're going to be 2 points apart on points. Of course, 12 for P2, 10 for P3. But I believe the position would go to Mahor based on the fact that, of course, it was the Dutchman taking to the top step in race number 2, which means for Ladler, well, he's got to find a way past.
Yeah, indeed. Because of the situation, even though they are kind of mirroring each other with how they received those points. So it's not clear-cut who had the better results, but Remco Mahor, of course, having that win in race 2 would mean that he would move up into P2 in the final standing, so it's in his best interest to defend for that position. But also, lurking behind the two is Alex Emmer. And he has a fight with the car behind in Joachim Thunder. They are both on 14 points, so whoever finishes in front of the other will get P4 in the final standings.
I have to say, really impressed with both Joachim Thunder and, of course, Alex Emmer. They've just been quiet forces in this race. Of course, we'll get back to that in just a second. We've got Tim Ireland fighting away with Muldusu going into turn number 1 and turn number 2. Tim Ireland falling victim to the Turk, who's through and up into second place. Nicely done, of course, in that respective battle. But yeah, for Alex Emmer and Joachim Thunder, I don't think they finished outside of the top 5 on any of the occasions so far, both race 1 and race 2. They've not been the quickest drivers out on track, but they've been some of the most consistent, able to make the most of any crashes ahead of them and just settle themselves into their own little bubble. So hats off to the pair of them, just settling in quite nicely. Let's see how they're going to be able to do for the rest of this race, which is settling down ever so slightly. However, the main thing is going to be to keep an eye out for that fight for second, because of course Emma not a million miles off it, only about a second off Dominic Ladler, who's about 6 or 7 tenths off at Remco Mahor for second place as well. So we could very easily have a three-way fight going on in a lap or two's time.
Yeah, indeed, and especially now with only 6 tenths between Mario and Ladler, slips him. Oh, and Ladler goes wide. Ladler goes very wide at the exit of Ascari. That loses him quite a lot of time, not that much, maybe 1 or 2 tenths, because you can't keep it just pinned in that situation. Or it's also the best thing to do in front-wheel drive cars. But that will lose him probably the best slipstream he could have had if he didn't do so.
Ifs, buts, maybes, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, really, when it comes to motor racing. And, well, you just got to pick yourself back up and, well, hope that the next one is going to be an even better opportunity. Of course, you are in control of your own destiny. You've got to write your own story, and you are in control of your own luck. So making sure that you maximize each and every single one of those opportunities that you do get. Here's mark on your marquee on the back of Muldusu. This is the fight for 6th place. Of course, they've got Joachim Thunder just ahead for P5, side by side, as they run their way towards the braking zone. Unfortunately, actually, no, this is on your mark in the Audi RS3. Big rear lockup going in to turn number 1 and turn number 2. Able to hang firm. Tim Ireland just in behind for P8. So on your mark, you're doing a really good job. It's just consider, consolidating that position, albeit very much on the limit going into the brakes.
Possibly a bit over the limit, seeing the lockup on the rear end. But on the other end, on the front-wheel drive cars, it's not that big of an issue. Of course, it's not the ideal situation, but it could be worse if you lock up the fronts, for example. But yeah, he's hanging on to that P7. He's currently sitting in P6 in the overall standings, and every point he can get now would help him stay clear of the 3 cars behind.
Let's see, approaching towards the second half of this race. 7.5 minutes just about completed. And we'll head towards the, well, walking out of the woods as opposed to into them. Of course, when it comes to racing this evening, it's flown by, of course, another RENNSPORT community event taking place. Dominic Ladler there in third, Remco Mahor just ahead once again in their respective fight for both P2 in this race, but also P2 in the championship. A little bit of poetic symmetry, I suppose, in the sense that the P2 fight for this race also reflects the P2 fight in the championship. As things stand, Kurbanov looks to be fairly secure in that front. On your marquee on the inside of Tim Ireland, not quite close enough into the Parabolica. So getting treated to plenty of battles here this evening.
Yeah, indeed. I think so far the third race is quite comfortably the most enjoyable to watch, as now Dominic Ladler has a look down the inside, decides to not go for it, tucks back into the racing line behind Remco Major. But, I mean, they have now something to fight for, really. And especially if Ladler and Major were to collide, which we don't expect now, there is a high chance that Alex Emmer and Joachim Thunder can even surpass them in the standings, which of course they both don't want to happen. And it's still 6.5 minutes to go, probably 7 minutes with the final lap. So plenty of time to plan a move, to execute a move, and hopefully finish the move.
Yeah, time is probably not on the side of some of these drivers, and with each passing minute is one less opportunity for them to, of course, make the most of any opportunities that do come their way. But yeah, into the final 6 minutes of this evening, Remco Mahor still doing a brilliant job as to consolidate that second place. Alex Emmer as well there in fourth. Not necessarily directly involved with things at the moment, but certainly ready if things were to go wrong between Mahor and Ladler.
Indeed, he's just waiting for an opportunity. But even if Mahor and Ladler just start to fight here and there a bit, on Monza it costs you quite considerable amount of time, because if you have to sacrifice just a tiny bit on the exit, it will cost you so much time going out of Ascari, going out of the first chicane, because the straights and acceleration zones are just this long.
Yeah, and slipstream is something that you rely on quite a lot, especially here at Monza, to actually get those moves done, and particularly to maintain a high speed. Of course, Alex Emmer there in fourth, still running fairly decent. And then, of course, in the rest of the field, not really much going on apart from that fight. Second, third, and fourth. Here is the race leader, of course, Elmar Kurbanov, the pole sitter, the race 1 winner, and now the race 3 leader, and looking to be the RENNSPORT Community Event Front-Wheel Drive Series champion, I suppose, here at Monza, as he's topping the timing sheets and once again will be looking strong to get another win. I mean, he's 4.5 seconds clear of the field. Doesn't look to be slowing down anytime soon.
No, he really doesn't. He has something to demonstrate here today, I guess. Oh, and Ladler. Again, having a look on you, it's just showing himself, but I don't think that's really impressive to Remco Major, who has seen a lot himself in the sim racing. So, but he's closer than ever, and he's using all of the track that he got.
And there is Ladler in the slipstream, looking menacing as ever in the mirrors, of course, of the race 2 winner, looking to absolutely launch one to the inside of the Ascari chicane. Bit of contact between the pair of them as Remco Mahor goes the long way round through the first part of Ascari and hangs on to P2. Very harshly defended between the pair of them. Of course, as things stand, Remco Mahor will be taking second place in the championship ahead of Ladler, who definitely has got a little bit of incentive to go for it. Alex Emmer able to close the gap and just about going to be getting a little sniff of slipstream with just a handful of laps left to go.
Yeah, final, what is it, 2 laps maybe again. So this will go right down to the wire if this continues, and we may see a last turn attempt, because Remco Major is just placing his car in a way that Dominic Ladler can't just throw down the inside without overshooting a turn, or he can't just... It's very hard to outplay Remco Major, that's what I'm trying to say. And Ladler himself is a very, very talented driver, So they are pretty much on equal terms here, in an equal car.
Exactly that, and it's just going to come down to whoever is the better driver between the pair of them. Of course, it did go the way of Mahor in race 2, albeit not to the full control of Dominic Ladler, who did get sort of roped into a battle with Kurbanov late on in the race, which did see him slightly out of contention with the Dutchman. But now they're head-to-head. They've not really got much distraction around them unless Emma does get himself involved in the dying moments. It is just a straight-out fight between the pair of them. I believe we are going to head our way on to the final lap in a few moments' time, depending on when Kurbanov, of course, crosses the line. If it's not within the next now, it will be the final lap next time by. So penultimate lap of the race as things stand, which means Dominic Ladler, well, needs to get a move on.
Yeah, but he is close again. It's 5/10. He will claw back quite a lot of time on the straights. Now had a good exit. So he might be close enough, or again in proximity range, in the last sector. Maybe if the subsim will be that powerful, if he gets a good run through Parabolica, he might be able to get into sector 2. But it's quite hard to tell.
Time will tell. All depends whether or not Mahor makes a mistake, Ladler makes a mistake. 1 lap left to go then for the RENNSPORT Community Event Front Wheel Drive Series here at Monza. Kurbanov looks secure for his 2nd win of the evening. And, of course, the championship victory, 7 seconds clear of the rest of the field. He's had the, well, clearest sight at the front for the entirety of the race and is looking set to continue to stretch that advantage. But 1 lap left to go. All eyes on this fight for second. Mahor, I mean, realistically, as long as he keeps it fairly clean, gets his exits right, there's not much that Ladler can do.
Yeah, and also what we haven't talked about much, because it's not as big of a fact in this race as, for example, Daytona 2 weeks ago, but the tire temperatures. You have front-wheel drive cars, so you basically do everything via the front tires. If they heat up, you lose not only braking force, turning force, but also acceleration. And it looks like Remco might have been able to save a bit more temperature for the end than Dominic Ladler had. Because if you look at the exit of the slower turns, like this, the second Lesmo, for example, or the first chicane, Remco seems to be able to just accelerate that tiny bit earlier without being dragged out to the outside too much. And it seems like the race has finished prematurely. Not sure what this is about.
Well, we'll call it as we see it, I suppose, if there's no on-track action. Of course, it was Kurbanov that took the victory, and with it, the championship win as well for this evening. And from what we saw, it was Remco Mahor from Dominic Ladler in P2 and P3. Unfortunately, not quite able to have the barnstorming finish that we were hoping for. But yeah, that was the end of the evening. All in all, albeit with a slightly confusing end, I think we were treated to some fairly good action.
Yeah, indeed. Especially in the last race, we've seen a lot of racing and action on track. Very close fights, and yeah, close battles in the end. And I'm just currently putting together the final results, but of course the victor of today is Elmar Koronov.
I don't think that was ever in doubt, really, more than anything. His pacing qualifying 0.8 of a second clear of the rest of the field, which was a sensationally quick time to put in. Of course, I believe in the end of 55.5 ahead of course, Dominic Ladler, who joined him on the front row. We have managed to confirm the result. It's Elmar Kurbanov, 11 points clear of Dominic Ladler in P2 in the, of Dominic Ladler, who in the end was able to secure P3. Remco Mahor has then, because of his result in race number 3, getting that second place, was able to then get himself ahead by a good few points and secure second. And then, of course, come Alex Emma ahead of Joachim Thunder, 22 and 20 points respectively for them. And then, of course, 9, 5, 7, and 5 tied on points, of course, Abiwala versus the Turk, of course, in the final place on the grid, of course. And then with Tim and Mark getting themselves 9 and 7 points respectively. But the main point was, of course, that fight for the lead. And in the end, Mahor was able to edge things out by 4 points ahead of Dominic Ladler, which was a remarkable result for him, assisted by his brilliant driving in race 2.
Yeah, indeed. I think if we can take some final conclusions out of this race, front-wheel drive cars are contact cars, definitely. But yeah, there's a lot to build on for future events. Talking about future events, we will have the schedule for the next 2 weeks ready. And it looks like this. So in 2 weeks' time, we will drive the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup again. This time at Hockenheim for, again, a 2-race setup. And this will be on the 29th of March. With 2 feature races as this season, with GT3 and front-wheel drive series, in this case on rotating tracks. And a new time format. Pretty simple to understand. Each hour you will have the following contests on the minute mark. So, for example, 5 o'clock flat GT3 series at Daytona, 5 o'clock and 5 minutes, Porsche 9, and so on. Pretty simple one. But we also have another announcement because we are adding something else to the RENNSPORT community events, let's say, events list. Because instead of just running the RENNSPORT community events every 2 weeks, we will have the RENNSPORT Community League running in between. 6 races, 5 tracks. We've got a trailer ready. Enjoy.
Get yourself onto the RENNSPORT Discord, get yourself involved with all of the RENNSPORT socials as well, so you're able to keep up with everything that is going forward with the community. A lot of exciting stuff on the horizon. Get yourself out on track, enjoy yourself, and maybe one day we'll see you out on the circuit for the RENNSPORT community event as well. My name has been Zach Sweeney. I've had Lino alongside me in the commentary booth, as well as doing a brilliant job as to follow all the action and make sure the broadcast looks beautiful as always. We thank you to, of course, everyone out there for participating in the Twitch chats and of course for keeping us company. It's been an absolute honor to talk you through each and every single bit of the racing action out there. Of course, a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon for RENNSPORT, so make sure you're up to date, and of course we'll see you soon. In the meantime, it's a very warm goodbye.
Goodbye.